By now, I'm sure a lot of you have already noticed this, but there have been several characters that are overlapping each other, with the same element and same agent class. Which brings me to today's topic. Does Zenless Zone Zero have an agent problem? Specifically, is it affecting the creativity of a character's kit and team building? Hi, my name is Spade, and I'll be at your service today. So to answer my question, yeah and no. So the game has set itself with only 5 elements and agent classes, whereas in other games, not only are there more options, but multiple characters can have the same element and weapon class, but have completely different roles. So the closest I can compare Zenless to is Honkai Star Rail. They have multiple paths that do different roles, but even then there are more options and niches within them. And it can get pretty noticeable with how element reliant most of Zenless content is. If the enemy is weak to ice, use an ice agent, right? It's pretty simple and straightforward. And to go even further, its endgame normally doesn't repeat the same element on each side. So if, for example, you have Ellen and Miyabi, you'd probably use Miyabi. Poor Nom Nom Shark. But okay, let's say they did repeat the same element. Then wouldn't that mean only one of them has the right supports? In most cases, yeah. Ellen and Miyabi are an exception because they function differently. Now, while they function differently, they could still use the same team, but to maximize their kits, they have different preferences in characters. And because they function differently, I feel like that is a very important point that I'll get back to later on. So even if they have different classes, as long as they fall into the same role and element, somebody is gonna get benched. Now, I don't think power creep is an alarming issue yet. However, everything that I stated earlier can definitely contribute to that thought. The tables have turned and the cat got caught by the rat. Now, moving on to more neutral side of things, Zenless has introduced new elements, being Miyabi's Frost and whatever each one has. But this is a neutral take because while they are considered separate anomalies and can trigger disorder, to an ice or ether weak enemy, they are still just ice and ether. Just reminding you that these are still the same elements and not exactly new ones, and are likely only reserved for special characters, so don't expect every other character to have a new element of the same element, if that makes sense. Now, I would also like to remind you that you probably aren't subscribed. That was pretty smooth, huh? So, I would really appreciate it if you could support my channel by liking this video and subscribing for more Zenless content. Now, my channel right now mostly consists of Genshin and Star Rail. I just started with Withering Waves, so more Zenless content are coming up, so be on the lookout for that. And I'd also like to know what character you would max Mindscapes for. I personally love Astra and Jane though, so probably those two for me. But comment down below which one you would do that for. Alright, back to the video. So despite Zenless only being limited to 5 elements and classes, I personally think that they have done a pretty good job of diversifying their characters, from a look standpoint and their kits as well. So coming back to the point I made earlier about Ellen and Miyabi, they function differently. Ellen is a typical crit DPS that prefers a stunner and a support, while Miyabi is also a crit DPS, although she is an anomaly agent. She relies on teammates that are able to build up anomalies quickly to trigger disorders. And as I stated earlier, both of them can still use the same team, for example being Lycan and Tsukaku. But that's not exactly a fair comparison, is it? Because as I mentioned earlier, Miyabi is an anomaly agent. So let's take Ellen and Hugo. Both are typical crit DPSs that fall under the same element in class, but they still function differently. And Hugo is pretty interesting because he scales higher the more stun agents are on the team. So despite them falling in the same categories, they play and feel different. A better example is Chingy and Trigger, same situation, but their kits offer different benefits to a team. Chingy is a stun agent that stuns enemies quicker for more burst-like DPSs, for your Juyuans, your Haramasas. While Trigger is a support stun agent that stuns slower but provides buffs and allows the DPS to have more fuel time. one is not necessarily better than the other, as both of them provide different benefits for different teams. So despite several characters having the same roles on paper, and more characters are gonna be like that, for example we have Kaleda and Lighter, and then now we have Jufufu, although we still have to see what her kit does, but again, the kits are diverse and creative enough to separate themselves. Now I mentioned earlier about Hugo and Ellen performing, playing, and feeling differently. And I feel like that is a very important aspect in a game such as Zenless. Because if you found, for example, if you found Ellen's get clunky, you might like Hugo's better. With a game that can be highly dependent on skill, enjoying the look and feel of a character can definitely contribute to how well you play them. Which leads you to be more dedicated and skillful with said character because you like them, right? You know, either their aesthetics, how they look, their design, or how their kit feels or plays. You know, there's a whole lot of different factors that can help you. Now, Zenless has also stated that they are improving older characters, and I'm just assuming here, but probably what we're going to get is what we can actually already play already in Hollow Zero. And for example, Ellen, Billy, Corin, Jane, and a few more characters have new movesets and new animations. I personally found Corin to be super fun when riding on a chainsaw and having like this grouping mechanic for her, so I really like that. Ellen's was pretty cool as well to me because of her Getsuga Tensho at the end of her combo. So if you're a Bleach fan, I'm sure you'd like that as well. Whether or not these are what we're actually going to get when 2.0 goes live, at the very least, this shows us the direction that they're heading and the different possibilities that they have with different characters. Now lastly, they actually tease us with a new agent class for Yishuan. I don't know what the name is, but we'll figure that out later on. So is it reserved for special agents? Will many others have it? We still don't know. But I'm glad that they're expanding very early on compared to Hoyo's other games. You know, for example, it took us 2 years to get Dendro for Genshin, I think 2 to 3. And then after 2 years, we just got Remembrance for Honkai Star Rail. So I'm glad that they're, you know, progressing really quickly, and I'm really excited on how they're going to cook it, so we'll see. So in summary, yeah, especially at the beginning of Zenless Zone Zero, they may have been limiting themselves because of the lack of options with the elements in classes, as well as a big portion of the content being heavily reliant on them. But as I stated earlier, they have been creative enough to separate their characters, you know, improving them, and they're already expanding their options, you know, with Yishuan. So yeah, there's a lot of counter arguments between them, but I feel like Zenless has done a pretty good job of balancing them, so we'll see how the future of the elements and classes go. But yeah, that's it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Let me know what your thoughts are on the topic that I just discussed, or maybe I may have missed something, so let me know in the comments down below. As always, I would really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. And alright, I'll see y'all in the next one. Take care.